I'm here with Sarah Hink, who's our other attorney and my law partner, and we're also here with Dr. Kristen Wynns with Wynns Family Psychology. So thank you for being here, Kristen.
Happy to be here.
We want to talk a little bit today about really focusing on children and how to help them and parents sort of work through the issues that come along, unfortunately, with separation and divorce. But first, can you tell everyone who's watching a little bit about yourself and your practice and that sort of thing?
Sure. So my practice, Wynns Family Psychology, we specialize in children and adolescents broadly.
Right.
And then within that, I have an amazing team of now 11 psychologists and therapists. So everyone kind of has their specialty within that. There are a handful of us that have more of the forensic specialty where we do focus on custody, divorce, court issues that someone needs to be able to help with those, and we happen to really enjoy that work. So we have our offices in Cary and in North Raleigh, and we just had our 10-year anniversary.
Wow,
so we just hit the big first decade of being in practice, and each year's been better than the last. It's really rewarding to do this kind of work.
We had, I can't remember her name, I apologize, but she's a parent coordinator with your...
Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, she was great. So,
so
you do parent coordination.
Yes.
Do you work with children, families, that sort of thing? Right?
Yes, therapy, testing for any common childhood issue, and for adults for who might be going through a custody dispute and need psychological testing. And we have groups, and then of course the custody evaluations and related services.
Right. Now, what ages do you see? Are there any cutoffs or any children that are too young for you to see?
Not really. We start pretty little with 3-year-olds. I have a 3-year-old on my caseload right now who's adorable. And then we go all the way up through college age, and then adults still manage to sneak their way onto our caseload, which I think is fun when they say, we can tell you're a child place, but we really want to come here. So we still see adults in our practice too. Yeah.
Great.
Well, that makes me think of a question. It's like when parents divorce and their children are older, like in their 20s or whatever, does it affect them like it? I mean, you think they're adults, they should not be over it. It's your mom and dad, they do what they want. Do they still have issues with that separation and divorce?
Absolutely.
Do they?
I mean, of course, in some ways they're better equipped to handle it just from maturity, but if you think about it, it's also a bigger blow if they're used to mom and dad being together for 18 years through high school, and then their whole world is changing. It can be a really big blow.
Right, but a lot of parents, they sort of wait till that, that last one leaves, and then they make that decision, So we don't, it's not a custody issue for Sarah or I, but I guess it is sort of a family dynamics issue and how to work
My
through all that.
experience so far, that those children that are age of young 20s, they're quicker to kind of cut off contact with one parent if there's a lot of anger there.
I
think the blowback is actually can sometimes be worse, especially for a parent, the person going through the separation, not expecting that to happen, but since they are an adult, they're kind of more free to voice their opinions. And
well, that's true.
It's very true. They can have that alliance with one parent very quickly.
Then there's nothing we can do from our perspective,
forcing
them custody, but to seek help from you, Kristen, or someone else around there would be very important to reestablish that relationship with their parents.
Yes, definitely. Before too much time goes by, it just gets ingrained.
Yeah, so what do you think is the proper time for someone to seek help, just from your experience? Is it before relationships get too broken down in separation, or when's a good time for people to come and seek counseling?
I was actually just speaking with Dr. Thomas, my associate, about this today, because we love it when parents seek our services when they're still discussing separating and divorcing, and they see us either for co-parenting to say, okay, well, how can we already get on the same page with parenting, or they want to already give their children a place to come and sort of have that baseline as we're set up to be a safe, comfortable place for the kids to process what they're going through, or to talk through how to tell the kids. So we're biased to think it's wonderful if they seek help as early as possible. Yes, to go ahead and just get whatever set of services they need in place to just help everybody, the parents and the kids, make it through as well as they can.
Right, and probably establish some boundaries as to know how much communication is proper and how much communication might not be helping the situation.
Right, or even how you tell them that you're separating and to work through.
That's a big one. Lots of do's and don'ts around that a lot of parents don't even realize until we start to lay some of that out.
Right. So, like a lot of times one parent will want to do that, the other one just is sort of entrenched, or they're upset, or they're mad.
Yes.
You guys cannot see a child if both parents are not consenting, or am I wrong about that?
In general, that is our preference. It's difficult when they're married. Technically, they can still just have one parent consent.
Okay.
So we take it a little bit on a case-by-case basis, but we prefer,
To have both
for
parents
sure,
on board?
to have both parents consenting. Even if one parent says, well, I'll consent and sign, but I don't want anything to do with it, we still prefer for them to at least be aware
Right.
that we're in place. And then if they change their minds, we're happy
Right.
to talk to them.
Okay. And so, I did a deposition a couple of days ago, and one of the issues that come up is that one parent's alleging the children don't want to go see the other parent.
Mm-hmm.
The other parent's alleging, well, they don't want to see me because you're telling them things and
Yes.
alienating them
Yes.
from me. So, I mean, what can you suggest to help sort of work that one parent that's having to work through that issue to have their children with them and not
Mhm.
make it so
Happens a
drama
lot.
real?
It's
Yeah.
such a common scenario. As you described that, I thought of half of my caseload
Okay.
has that dynamic. And it is really hard because oftentimes there's a little truth in both sides. Sometimes the one parent, without even meaning to, is saying things that perhaps could push the child away from the other
Right.
parent or get them allied with them. And sometimes the other parent might actually have some parenting weaknesses that were kind of covered up when they were all in one
That's
home.
true, yeah.
And then now that they're separated and it's more on their own, sometimes
Right.
those parenting weaknesses come out and the child is like, I've been uncomfortable with your anger this whole time, but now I'm gonna make a bigger stink because
Well,
it's time to
that's
come
right.
see you.
And, I mean, I'm sort of like you. I think the truth sort of lies in the middle most of the time.
Yeah.
So what suggestions do you have for a parent where a child, they're going to pick them up or they're meeting and the child doesn't want to go? What do you do? Because you don't want to put, it's just a hard decision.
It's
for
really
parents.
hard. I tend to err on the side of encouraging parents to be pretty firm with whatever the schedule is that they've
Mhm.
agreed to, assuming there's some semblance of a schedule.
Right.
So I've just seen too many times if parents make an exception and say, he's really upset this time, so we're not gonna send him, then
Right.
unfortunately that sort of sets a new precedent that the child is in the driver's seat and
Right, and can make that decision.
yes, which causes all kinds of problems. And I usually try to warn the one parent who the child is okay with. Right now, he's saying he doesn't want to see dad, but it could be in 4 years, dad is the cool one that lets him drive the
Right.
car and have
Right.
girls over,
That's right.
and he's refusing
Right.
to see you. If you guys have set that precedent, it could come back around. So I really encourage parents to, I guess, do tough love, where they're
Right.
firm,
Right.
you gotta go, but
Right.
then also figure out if there are genuine issues that need to be
right.
address them with the other parent, or find a professional
Right.
to get involved and help address the
Right.
concerns.
So what do you say to that, Sarah, about that comes, if you've got a court order
Mhm.
and one parent isn't, getting their visitation and the other parent saying, well, it doesn't want to go.
Well, without a legitimate concern that might warrant some kind of modification of custody, the judge is gonna say, you need to get that child to where they need to be. If they need to go to dad's, they need to go to dad's. And
Right.
that makes me think of how often people come into our office and say, one of the questions they first ask is, how young or how old do they have to be, the child, for the judge to listen
Yes,
to them?
right,
And,
right.
how much is this, if he doesn't wanna go live with his dad or his mom, he doesn't have to, right? The judge will listen to him, right? And that's not necessarily the case.
No.
And it depends on where you are, what county you're in, and what judge you have, how much weight they're gonna give a child's opinion about where they wanna live. But typically, it's gonna be the parents, and it's the
Yes.
parents that need to make those decisions and to actually be in that parenting role.
Right.
Not the child getting to decide where he or she wants to live, because then you're gonna have the child decide if he wants to do his homework and if he wants to do
That's
this.
right.
That's not the role that the parent's supposed to have, is to let the kid make those decisions. So how do you work with that with the children themselves and conquering those changes in mom's house, dad's house, and where they wanna live?
Yes, well, I was gonna add too, even though a kid might think they want to make that decision, it's actually a huge burden for a child to have the weight of deciding the
That's
schedule or how much time she's gonna have at both houses. That's a big burden for kids, that even though in the moment might feel exciting and good,
Yeah.
I've seen it happen where if kids are given that chance, whether it's testifying in court or just some professional telling them, you can choose or tell me what you want. I've seen it really cause problems down the road emotionally to have had that such a weighty decision resting on their shoulders.
Choosing between their parents.
Yes.
It's not a position that you would want to put a
No,
child in.
not at all.
Not at all. But I think part of it is also that you're separated, you're divorced, I've changed my child's life, it's an upheaval, so you sort of want to make up for it in a way, and it's hard to set those boundaries sometimes.
It is. I mean, that's a tip I give parents just in general who are asking how to preserve their relationship with their child going through a separation, divorce, and it's sort of both. You need to have more TLC on one hand, more hugs and laying there in bed at night snuggling and listening to music and carving out time. But then on the other hand, it's really key to keep the boundaries and the rules and the schedule, because that's comforting to kids, whether they would admit it or not. They like to know, oh good, the rules are still the same, mom's still gonna collect my cell phone at night. That actually reassures them to know where the line is.
That's great advice, that's great advice. So, you know, and so now we're in two different households. And so, you know, everybody talks about co-parenting. What does that mean, really?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know if that term was around when I was getting my degree.
Probably not.
It's certainly something in my practice that we see a huge need for, to educate people, especially post-separation and divorce. What is it and how to do it effectively? So in a dream scenario, it's the idea that parents, even after an ugly divorce, let's say, that they still say, okay, our kids are the top priority. So even though we might still be mad at each other and agree we're never going to be friends, at least for the kids' sake, let's focus on their best interest and essentially just agree to communicate and cooperate in decision making, in raising the kids and supporting the relationship with the other parent. That, and of course all the strategies within that of how to do that logistically, but that's basically the idea, that they would still be able to unite in the raising of these kids despite whatever
they've got
feelings they have
for each other. Yeah. And so do you recommend that parents have the same sort of schedules and routines in their homes, or you know, judges will say, when they're with you, they're with you, unless they're really young, you know, sort of have a routine. But a lot of, like you say, that's comforting to kids to have that sort of the same routine.
Well, and you mentioned a key good point in there. The kids' ages do matter. So when I've had cases with toddlers and babies, I'm giving advice, if you can really keep the nap schedule and meals the same and bedtime, that's really important. But if they're tweens and teens, then you can certainly have more flexibility, and maybe mom's a stickler about bedtime and screen time, and dad's more of a stickler about social media and dating or whatever. So there's always going to be some variance.
Give and take, right.
It's nice with values and certain things if the parents still have the same expectation, like, well, you're going to go to church, or you can't have a cell phone until
this day,
14 or whatever.
And down the road, I know that co-parenting can be frustrated by an adding of a new spouse or a new significant other. So say that co-parenting is going pretty well, the parties communicate, the parents are on the same page, it goes smoothly, and then in walks a new significant other. How do you see that affecting a lot of your clients in their lives?
It's like you're in my practice with me. So I see that. And I warn parents about that. The ones that are getting along really well and doing a nice job, I say, this is so awesome, I'm so happy for you guys, but let's just talk about the what ifs when one of you gets the new significant other, because I see it all the time, that person is then in their ear, well, why do you let her talk to you that way? You should be fighting for yourself, or why do you let him control you that way? So it is unfortunate that sometimes adding another person in the mix can cause chaos and confusion, but I do try to give parents advice about staying true to that focus of focusing on the kids and having the proper boundaries for the new significant other or even step parent, that I try to educate about, they should be a positive influence in the home, but not doing the heavy
Right.
lifting with
Right.
parenting and discipline, and that should still be the
Yeah.
two parents.
So boundaries is key, pretty much
It
at all
is.
stages of
Yes.
co-parenting and through the whole process. And of course, there's the other side of things where maybe the new significant other isn't causing too much of a frustration, but
Mhm.
the fact that there's just someone else in the kid's life
Right.
Sure.
where the other parent might feel a little threatened or have a hard time just adjusting to there being another parenting figure in the life of a child.
Sure.
So how do you work on that end of things too?
Well, and I was going to say, I've seen the opposite too, where
Mhm.
sometimes a new boyfriend, girlfriend comes on the scene and they can be a stabilizing
Right.
force, where
Mhm.
maybe these two are so in the weeds with their issues and being upset, and another person can come
Right.
along and actually be a soothing
Positive,
influence
yeah.
to say, well, gosh, your kids are great, so let's
Right.
just appreciate that, and maybe y'all just take things down a notch.
Right.
So I don't know if that was answering your question, but I just
There's a lot of
wanted to
different
add
aspects
that.
of it.
Yeah.
Do you bring the new significant other into the co-parenting, or is it just with the parents?
I have, and I think it's great. I've had sessions with all four in the room,
That's
with
right.
the original two, and then each new significant other, and those are great. I mean, they can be a little awkward and tense at times for those four,
Right.
but I think it's a wonderful display. Whenever I get that in my office, I just go out of my way praising
That's
them
right.
to say, look, with all y'all have been through, you're all
I
sitting
know,
there
I know.
tucked in my sofa together for the sake of these children. What an amazing
Yes.
testament that is to their dedication to
That
the
is.
kids.
And it's a realistic image of what's
It
really
is.
happening.
It
There's
is.
four parenting roles
It,
here.
it really
You have
is.
the primary parents and you have other people who are part of the kid's life and
Yes.
need to come together.
Yes, that are going to have an influence whether the other parent likes it or not. They're
Mhm.
going to have an influence on the kids, so may as well make it a joint effort and
Right.
a positive one.
Right. So that sort of leads me into, so how do you help parents sort of heal and get through all that hurt and pain and to the point they can focus on their
Mhm.
kids and not their own hurt and, loss and that sort of thing?
Yes, I mean, of course, every case is different, but sometimes I'm of course biased to think that therapy is a wonderful tool. So
It is.
sometimes if each parent or the one parent who's having a rough time can just get their own help,
Right.
and I advise that so that they're not venting to their kid. Again, if they have a
Absolutely.
therapist to vent to and say, I can't believe she's
Did
still
that-
doing
did
this
that,
or he is, then that's great because it gives them that place to get support and get
Right.
advice, but then hopefully then they're going home to their children and not letting any of that out
Right.
at home. So sometimes just having a few sessions of therapy with an outsider who doesn't have a dog in the
Well,
fight
that's true.
is helpful.
Uh,
In addition to parents just hopefully educating themselves by reading or getting in support
Mhm.
groups or talking to other friends and hopefully doing some of that work on their own to realize the better path of moving forward with it with an X.
And I think
Right.
you said something earlier about how important it is for parents to come in before they separate to figure out what they're going to embark on down this road together and obstacles that are going to happen.
Yes.
And one of those big things was speaking to the kids about
Mhm.
separating. And what is some advice that you can give some parents who are thinking about separation if they make that decision, and how to speak to the kids
Right.
about that decision?
Sure. I mean, again, I have my dream scenario that doesn't always work, but I advise if parents can do it together, that's preferable
Right.
in most circumstances. So one parent who's upset in the moment isn't announcing the news to the
Right.
kids, but that it's a thought out, planned meeting
Mhm.
with both parents where they know a set day and time that's hopefully not around the start of school
Right.
or
Holidays or
Christmas,
birthdays
yeah,
or
exactly.
something like that. yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that it's, maybe the start of a long weekend with not a lot of plans, that they tell the kids together, that each of them sort of
Right.
has a script really as
Right,
much as
right.
possible of who's gonna say what, and then we just talk about what not to say, that kids don't need to know details.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to know if there was an affair or a drinking problem or any of that. I mean, it's best to sort of have their description that's a little cheesy and generic, but it works
Right.
just to say, how the parents, some sometimes parents can't get along anymore, be
Right.
good parents living in
Right.
the same house, and just give the higher level explanation. And then I always tell parents to make sure kids know it's okay to ask questions,
Okay.
to say how they feel, because sometimes parents are so afraid that their kids are gonna be upset, that they deliver the news and then they're like, okay, phew, did that. Right? It's really key to say, well, how are you feeling? And to even give
Right.
examples like, well, I know if the kid's hesitant to speak up, it's okay to name it. I mean, again, parents are sometimes afraid, but to say, well, you might be feeling really sad, you might be angry, you might be confused. Let us have it. Tell us how you're feeling, and if you can't do it now, then I advise parents to definitely keep circling back to that, really for years, because sometimes as kids go through a new developmental phase, maybe they're okay with it, and then maybe they hit 13 and hormones are in the mix, and then they're furious again. Why couldn't you guys work it out, and why can't we be a normal family? So I encourage parents to not beat a dead horse, but to circle back around every so often and say, hey, how are you feeling about things? How are you feeling about your dad and I, your mom and I, how things are going? Just to make sure the kid knows that door is always open.
That's great advice. So so you say let them ask questions. Well, then what if they start asking questions? How do you sort of deflect those? We want specific, especially if they're older. You know, why? What happened? What do you say to that? To not, reveal too much that they don't really need to know.
It's really hard because some parents really want the kids to know the truth,
Right.
especially if they were on the receiving end of something unpleasant like an affair or something. They want the kids to know the truth, and I just advise parents to say there are details of this that you really just don't need to know. You've got to trust that we're telling you what we think you need to know, and anything above that is just not going to do you any good. You just got to trust us on that. And as you get older, that may change, but for now we've told you what you need to know, and just trust that the adults have it, and then go into the messages of we both love you, we're both going to be in your lives, tell us how you feel, all that.
Okay, that's good. So is it better for children, do you talk to the parent, like when they come in, do you talk to the parents first and talk to the children? Do the children have a safe space that they feel you're not going to share, unless somebody's going to get hurt or something? Is that their private space?
It's supposed to be. We really try to get parents on board with that if we can tell the child or teen that there's confidentiality, and that we tell parents general updates about what's going on. But if parents can really respect that it's the child or teen space, and not, be trying to pump for details or get the record or whatever. If they can really respect that, it's wonderful, because kids sometimes do feel like they can't really tell either parent how they feel, because they're afraid of hurting one's feelings and that it'll be used against them. So we love it when we can be that safe place for kids, and have parents respect that they need that.
And Sarah and I always hate to send out that subpoena to you or any other therapist. And judges are really cognizant, I think, of they don't want to know what the child said, but they sort of still want to know what's in their best interest.
Sure.
So how do you get around that? If you tell a child this is confidential, I'm not going to tell anybody, and then what happens when you have to?
Well, I was going to say, I always appreciate it if an attorney is asking for my record, and then I explained, the kid was promised confidentiality, but I'd be happy to write up a summary. I think sometimes attorneys are more than happy, or parents more than happy to work with us if we say, well, we'd love to give you some information, but just protect the details. Oftentimes that's all it takes, and then you can kind of have the best of both worlds.
Right. Any other questions, Sarah, that you can think of?
I don't know, but I know that just in a lot of our cases, people, they circle back to us and they're repeat clients, which is great. We appreciate that. We know that they trust us with their cases, but of course they can save money in attorney's fees and have a sound mind by coming to see someone like you, and really work on creating those tight relationships with their children and establishing boundaries with new people in their lives, and with the communication with their exes. So from your standpoint, and you have clients come to you, maybe they haven't sought representation yet, and how do you notice when to refer them to an attorney from your side of things?
Yeah, well, I probably tend to do it somewhat early on, only if it already seems like there's a really big difference of opinion about the schedule or custody or bigger issues with where the kid's gonna go to school or where the kid's gonna live. So, I mean, I think having professionals involved is just helpful because we all went to school for a long time to learn what we learned and be a resource. So I tend to probably refer early for all kinds of other professionals, just because even if you guys don't take on the case fully, but even if you can do a consultation and just help give some details that I don't know about from my neck of the woods. I've had that happen where then the parent comes back and says, okay, well that's really helpful. Now I at least learned that I can't do this and that I need to make sure to do this before I leave the house. So I think it's just really valuable to have a network that we can
So you can
refer
send them to
to.
the field, and maybe you can send them to us to say, really, you need to work on this because the judge is not going to let them pass.
Right, and I think it helps, it may help them too, like they may be, their heels dug in on, this is how I want it to be, and then they come talk to us and we can say, well, that's probably not how it's gonna be, so that can loosen them up sometimes too, I think, on their sort of rigidness of what they think they're gonna get or pass.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for joining us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
How can folks get in touch with you if they want to find out more about co-parenting or the therapy for their children through their separation and divorce?
Sure. Our website is chock full of resources. So it's wynnfamilypsychology.com, and that's Wynns with an S. Everybody wants to leave off the S. Or call our main office, 919-467-7777. And I'm always happy for people to email me directly if they're not even sure what services they need, which a lot of people aren't. My email's on the website, and they can just give me the basics and do a consultation, and then I can say, okay, I recommend individual, a group, some parent coaching, and just give a lot more information once they've given me some of the basics.
That's right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Catch us next month for our next Uncorked Facebook Live. Thanks.